All right, welcome everyone. Today is Wednesday, the 20th of May, 2026, and this is the SIG Cloud Provider office hours. We are a sub-project of the Kubernetes SIGs, and as such, we follow their meeting guidelines, which could be summarized as please be excellent to each other, and if you'd like to talk, please raise your hand. Although there's only three of us today, so it probably won't be an issue. All right. Um, so normally we do some sub-project updates, but I'm not sure we have any today. I don't know, Walter, is there anything from the API server network proxy we should be aware of?
Actually, maybe. So there was a couple of weeks ago, there was a bunch of interest in API Server Network Proxy, which was a good call out. I have added a weekly meeting on Fridays, and I did that, and then no one showed up. So if anyone's interested, please show up to the Friday meeting. Hopefully, everyone can now see the meeting. And we have some catch up to do. There was also a desire to make sure that we backport a bunch of the fixes, which is great. I can't do it on my own. Unfortunately, we have a policy of needing reviewers. So if anyone is interested, please come help. I'm happy to just send out PRs, but I do need people to help review them. And if anyone has an opinion about which PRs and how far back to get them cherry picked, this is sort of my call to action to please come chat with me. With the proviso that if you say you want them cherry picked, I'm happy to do the work, but I'm probably going to ask you to do the code reviews.
Right. Um, yeah, like I guess if worse comes to worse, you can always ping me. Like I can help review. I've looked at a few things there, but yeah, I think ideally it would be nice to get some fresh blood, especially like you said, a couple weeks ago we had folks interested in API server network proxy. So yeah, it'd be nice to see some more activity there.
100%.
Okay. I guess anything else on that one, Walter?
Uh, that's largely it. Yeah. I am hoping to get a bunch of stuff landed, get everything up to latest on the, and then cut a release and get it into KK.
Awesome. Okay. Then I guess we'll get into our main agenda topic here that Lucas has added about the CAP 5237 beta graduation. So I guess, Lucas, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so just as a reminder, the 5237 is the routes controller one, so switching to an event-based reconciliation there. And previously in the CAP, we wrote the beta graduation criteria that we want multiple infrastructure providers to have this feature flag enabled. And we basically got feedback that it works, and we have the field selectors right. But quite a while ago, we already talked about this, I think, or at least I talked about it with El Mico, that this criteria is probably a bit too tight, and we're probably not gonna have many infrastructure provider test this. So the question is if we want to, ease this criteria a bit. I wrote down as an example alternative, maybe we want to say we have a new metric now, which allows cloud providers to A/B test this, which would already be the case. So we've introduced the metric in 136. Or I'm not sure what other alternatives we have, but that was like one example which I had.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like having the beta criteria being like, multiple infrastructure providers enabling the flag might be a little bit too high of a bar. And I think you've identified the good reasons for that. Like, we can't expect the cloud providers to like take any changes that we have there, and like we can't really, we can't. I mean, we could enforce it, but it doesn't seem like the right thing to do. So yeah, I guess the question is, if we change the graduation criteria, then we need to, then we need to update the cap. Um, I don't know. Does anybody have thoughts about about graduating this to beta? And I guess like would the intention be like, Lucas, once we take this all the way to GA, are we going to have the flag? Is the idea, I can't remember, is the idea to have the flag on by default at that point? Or would it still be up to cloud providers to decide whether they wanted to enable it or not?
I think the general idea was to have it enabled by default then, and have the routes just being reconciled using informers in an event-based way, like we do with the node controller or in the service controller.
I think it's tough then because like if we want to have it turned on everywhere, we want to have good feedback from the individual providers that like, it's not breaking them or anything. Have we like I guess do we have any post analysis on the metrics that we've created during the previous release cycle?
I think we don't have really any feedback from other cloud providers if it helped them or not yet. I can tell for us it helps, yeah, in our CCM implementation. Yeah, but I'm not sure, like, if we can't really ask other cloud providers to test this for us, then it's a bit hard to get the feedback before we enable it by default.
Yeah, totally. It's kind of a chicken and the egg. Walter, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I had a couple things. I'm sorry, just something Lucas said. When you said it helped in our CCM, which CCM was that, Lucas?
The one
I feel like I
from
should know.
for Hetzner, for the Hetzner
Okay.
cloud.
All right.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to see if Kirthan, I think Kirthan's Amazon, and I know Amazon has traditionally had some quota, concerns with the CCM. So it'd be interesting to hear from Kirthan. Having said that, I had other things I wanted to actually ask. But yeah, Kirthan, if you know, that would be great.
Yeah,
We wonder? Oh, go ahead, Kirthan.
sorry. I mean, so yes, there is a lot of quota limitation in Amazon, but the problem with the route control is like at EKS, route control is disabled by default. I mean, it's not running in any EKS cluster. Like, so that's the reason like it's a bit difficult to get data from EKS because it's EKS doesn't run route controller. Like, it's disabled, enabled. So the controller.
All right.
So which means we need, if it's on the Amazon side, like then we have to like create a self-managed Kubernetes cluster on Amazon and then test it. Like
Okay. So the question I had asked in the cap yesterday. So if you didn't get to it, I got it, Lucas. But a lot of things like KCC, ACK, KSO, ESO. Sorry, ESO is which deal a lot with the cloud provider resources. Is this kind of which do similar things to the route controller? Is they have this concept of managing things like load balancers, etc., and a concept of a drift correction. And so my one concern with switching to switching away from the polling model is that most cloud providers don't actually tell you don't actually have a real watch API, right? Some of them you can use something like a pub sub or something to approximate a watch, But if the underlying resource changes, that the KRM is not going to tell you that the underlying system has modified. And so my concern was, I noticed we have the min resync period. Was the plan to do an occasional full reconciliation? And if it was, were we thinking that we would, could we use that to detect whether or not some drift correction had actually had to be done? And I'm sorry, I know I just droned on, but that if it'd be great to hear your thoughts on that, Lucas.
Yeah, so I think for the min resync period, we probably have the issue that it's a shared flag for the service and the node controller. So we probably cannot really lower its default, I think. I think right now it's computing a random value between 12 hours and 24 hours, or whatever you provide times 2. So we could maybe use the old interval flag and set the default value for it higher if the feature gate is enabled. So it's not a small 30-second polling interval, but it's maybe something like 5 minutes to have the drift correction. Other than that, I think for us that's not really an issue, but yeah, I can talk about the other cloud providers.
So I guess the question, when you say it's not a problem for you, is that because the end user has no access to whatever the route mechanism is whatever the mechanism is that is routes are being built on top of? Or
for us in theory, yes, but then I would say, okay, if you explicitly enable a routes controller and then fumble with a routing table of our system, how we do it, then I say it's like your fault and you cannot expect it to quickly reconcile. So we still have like the fallback for 12 hours, which I think is fine to do drift correction after 12 hours. But if you manipulate the routes table yourself, if you know you have something like the CCM there, then for us, I would at least say, then it's not easy to reconcile, or then we won't reconcile it quickly.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with not reconciling quickly. What would be great though is, and I sort of alluded to, was if we do end up having to drift correct, can we detect that and can we have a metric for it?
Okay, so like an additional, we got triggered by the min resync period and we had to change something because of that, and we want to track that basically to say, all right, we had this and that many drifts.
Yeah. Right. Otherwise, exactly to your point, like if the end customer is doing something, maybe they don't even realize what they're doing, and then it magically gets better. I want something we can look at that warns us about what's going on.
Yeah, that would work for me. Like introducing another metric for that should be pretty straightforward. Question is, do we want this new metric then for the GA, or do we want it? So can we progress to beta before we have this metric, or should we have this metric already for beta, or should we have it for GA? That's like the question I'm thinking of right now.
I definitely think we need it for GA. I'll push for that. I'll push hard for we need it for GA. I'm willing to be more reasonable about whether we need it for beta. I don't know if other people have opinions. Elmiko?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. Like I don't getting it in for beta seems, it would be nice to have, and I think it would help us to kind of reach the stable state, but obviously I don't think we're going to get it in for 1.37. It seems like that's going to come up pretty quickly on us. But at the least we should change the cap to kind of talk about this.
Yeah, so maybe in 1.37 we can update the graduation criteria and move the general state to beta. So maybe we get a bit more adoption in 137 from other cloud providers. And then we can introduce the new metric towards 138 then. Yeah.
Right. And then during the beta cycle, we can test the new metric, and then that can help us go to GA, I guess.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
I mean, the other thing I will mention, and I'm not even going to say we need it for GA, but it's sort of a thought exercise. I could see a world where if we discover this metric is routinely non-zero, we might want to consider allowing the cloud provider API to have something more watch-like as an optional parameter, and then cloud providers that can actually implement, a watch or a notification could actually accelerate the drift correction.
Yeah. Can you say that again, Walter?
Yeah. So everyone's familiar with the cloud provider API, right? It's our monstrous interface that most of us only partially implement. And so the idea would be we could add an optional mechanism into that API that cloud providers could implement, which is something like route notify or route watch. And if they implement it, then the route controller could trigger based on that rather than necessarily having to wait the long polling period Lucas mentioned. Right. And so I'm not saying we put it in now. What I'm saying is if we discover that we are routinely, like if the metric we put in that says we are drift correcting is routinely non-zero, that suggests that something is going on, at least in some cases, and maybe we should be providing an option for cloud providers to be able to drift correct faster. And that's one idea on how a cloud provider could opt to drift correct faster.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
But let's not. Sorry for interrupting there, Elmika. Let's not jump the gun. Like we can just put a mark in the sand. Let's worry about this if it turns out to actually be a problem. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
Could be in general also an interesting concept for the other controllers, like the lifecycle controller, to have like a form of, if the cloud provider has a watch-based mechanism to get informed when a server shuts down, then you could also do this a bit more event-based or pull it from the cloud provider, basically. So I think this watch-based mechanism would be also helpful to all the other interfaces.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like my concern here is like, okay, so in order to go to, we're like, originally we thought we'd go to beta when we got providers to pick this up. But things are kind of slow moving in the cloud provider range. So now we're going to say, okay, we're going to go to beta, even though only one provider is using this currently, and we're going to add a new metric. And then that new metric is going to help inform us on what should we do in terms of the drift mechanism before we go to stable. So like what feedback would we get during the beta cycle that would say, okay, like we're not going to go to GA or we need to redesign this? Like, is there anything that would cause us to stop and say, okay, let's not go to stable at this point? I'm just wondering, does it make sense to advance to beta if we're talking about still adding more metrics to kind of study this and everything?
I mean, I would hope that we get like a bit more adoption maybe in the cloud provider space, so that we have in general a bit more indication, like a bit more early indication, if something goes the wrong way. But we could also add our metric first and then try going to beta, so people, if they have issues, have more information on their hand to debug this or to get feedback.
I mean, I mean, like, like as much as I want to graduate this, like my gut is kind of telling me we should add the new metric during the alpha phase, and then maybe as a SIG we can choose a couple of the cloud providers that that the SIG owns, and we could just choose to like add this flag to see if we can get some study in. Yeah, Walter.
Uh, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm not sure I
Please.
entirely believe what I'm about to say, but I'm still going to
Yeah.
say it. Um, so again, I'm going to pick on Kirthan. Um, I remember when Amazon came to us and said, "Hey guys, we have a real problem with some of the controllers, like the route controller, and how often they are hitting our endpoints and that they're consuming customer quota, and it's a bad customer experience." And Kirthan just told us that they don't use route controller anymore, and I don't know that they're not using route controller anymore because of the quota usage, but I'm sure it didn't help. And so what I would say is, like, I suspect that we're going to have a better experience. We're going to, if we take this to beta, I think the cloud providers are more likely to engage with us because we're helping solve real problems for them. And that the metric as well, like I definitely think maybe we need to get this metric in before we go to GA. So maybe the thing to do is let it go to beta, but then say we need one full release with the new metric before it's allowed to GA. And so rather than pushing back on the beta and saying it has to be alpha this time, maybe the thing to do is allow it to go to beta this time, but basically say we need one full release with all the metrics before we're going to let it go to GA.
I mean, we're still quite early in the release cycle for 137, right? So, I mean, it might still be possible to add the metric in 137 and also progress with the cap so that 137 is really the release where everyone can test it in beta with both metrics.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I agree. Like, I like the way you put it, Walter, and I think, yeah, getting it into beta maybe will give people a little more confidence to try it out. I think also we should probably, as a SIG, we should probably also like try to graduate it into a few of these, into a few of the controllers just to see if we can get more of these metrics. Assuming that the maintainer communities are okay with that. Okay, so I guess like Lucas, how are you feeling on next steps here? I guess like working on the metric and then updating the cap are probably our big priorities. How are you feeling about that?
Feeling good. I think we're still quite early in the release schedule, so I would start working on first updating the cap with a new metric, then the graduation criteria for it, and then start implementing the metric. I mean, we already have one metric, so I'm comfortable to do another one.
Yeah,
rather quickly, hopefully.
I love us instrumenting up the cloud controllers more too. I think it's cool, help people give these kind of metrics and everything. Okay. I mean, if you're feeling good about it, Lucas, like I'm happy to keep helping out and like I'll try to be a little more responsive on the pings and whatnot. Because I know we've had issues in the past where we kind of like bobbled it on the cycle. So I'll try to stay up to date with you there.
Yeah, no worries. I also feel now more comfortable pinging the people. Like for the first time, I was like, "Oh, I'm new here. I don't know how much I can annoy folks."
Totally understandable. Okay. Anybody else have questions or comments on this topic? Alrighty. Okay, that is the end of our regular agenda for now, unless people have topics they'd like to add. But in the meantime, let's see if we have any triageable issues that have come up that are new for us. It looks like not. It looks like we still have the same issues that we had before. So that's in good shape. And then I think I'm determining that I don't think this grid is actually like useful for us to look at anymore, but man, this looks bad. I wonder what happened here. Like usually what we found is that these are like almost never related to the cloud provider because like our
this one. All right. We I know exactly what happened here. This is my fault.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, look at line 694. Oh, I was going to say, if you go back to if you look at line 694, which is funny because the thing I was actually going to raise my hand on, can you go back to the list of issues?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the third issue is done. We can mark that one as.
Oh, so you did blow it away then?
Oh yeah, I blew cluster. Well, I blew cluster away not in KK though. I blew it away in Cloud Provider GCP.
Yeah. Okay.
So this may be a little bit different, but yeah, I blew away Cloud Provider GCP. I'll work with someone on working out. Can you file a ticket for that Lohi failure and just ping me with it and I'll get someone to go work on it? Yeah, Cloud Provider GCP no longer has a cluster directory.
Nice. Okay,
it's gone.
So we need to get you. So you want me to open an issue and talk about this? I can do that after the meeting, actually.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I could either way, but yeah, it's I hadn't. I thought we had cleaned up enough. It looks like I missed something here.
Okay, so this is still useful then. Like that pushes back on my idea that I thought we weren't like, this is at least helpful for showing us that we broke the cloud provider GCP directory.
Well, I mean, we have our own tests that we were making pass. So maybe you're right, and maybe we just need to blow this away. But the one way or the other, we need to make sure that no one is relying on cluster anymore, because at least in Cloud Provider GCP, it doesn't exist anymore.
Right. But like, yeah, now it makes me wonder, like, because I was looking at the actual cloud provider tests and it looked like we were mocking out a lot of stuff and we weren't running things. So, all right, I'll make a note to go back and create an issue and ping you on it.
Yeah, we're now running. We're now bringing up the cluster using COPS and running all of our tests that way.
Nice. That's awesome to hear. Yeah, I've been watching a lot of the PRs go by in the cloud provider GCP, and I've been seeing a lot of activity around like fixing up the make files and getting things like kind of better prepared. So yeah, I love to hear that. I think that's awesome.
I also, at some point, I'd love to chat with you, Elmiko. And I mean, I think this goes for everyone. Elmiko and I have for a while now been talking about, we still need to come up with a name for it, like a manifest or a bill of materials or a cluster declaration, but a fairly agnostic way of describing what goes into a Kubernetes cluster that can then be used in a cloud provider agnostic way to, I preferably do both the test harness and maybe even distros. But I have been espousing this idea, and I think I've been getting traction. So
yeah. And, I would say that based on the feedback that we got in Amsterdam after we did the panel about distributions, like there is interest, I think, in the community to do this. We had more than a few people come up to us and thank us for kind of looking into this because they felt that it was something that the Kubernetes community had like overlooked. So yeah, like I think there is appetite in the community for that. We just need to kind of, like get together and come up with some ideas and kind of share it with people and everything. So yeah, like I think it's great progress. Happy to see it coming from the GCP cloud provider. Okay, so I've got a little action item here. I'll create an issue for Walter after this and ping you on it. Lucas, you got some action items to follow up on the cap and everything. And yeah, I guess if nobody's got anything else, we'll call it a meeting for today.
I might have a topic, if it's possible. Sorry, I'm presenting myself because it's the first time I'm joining this meeting. I'm Federico. I'm from Red Hat.
Yeah,
And
welcome.
I recently joined the company, and I'm currently working on a feature related to bring your own security groups for network load balancers in AWS. I know Kertan has been reviewing my PR, and so I wanted to chat. Maybe it's a bit of a detail, so please tell me if this is not the right audience where to discuss about this. But I think there was an interesting point in his in a company in the PR that Kertan left, and I wanted to have a chat about it. So I'll just put the link to the PR here in the chat. So essentially, the feature I'm building relies on a cloud config flag to be set. Otherwise, it just wouldn't work. Now, the problem is in the current state, the test cluster provision with COPS doesn't have this flag, doesn't set this flag. In addition, there is also another requirement that is to add an IAM permission. Now, I submitted a PR to COPS and they got it merged in COPS to support this new flag and provision a test cluster with all the settings and permissions that we need. But now Kertan correctly raised the point, that is, if we now enable the test cluster for AWS CCM to have these, now all the existing tests run with a different configuration. So it's kind of saying that we know that there are no regressions when the configuration is not set. Now the tests that exist are kind of compatible with both configurations because they are not really related to security groups. However, I think it's still a valid point. So I only thought of two solutions about to solve this problem. One is, which I don't recommend because it feels a waste, it's to provision two different test clusters and run it twice and run the test on both, but it feels like a waste of resources. The other option is I extract a subset of the NLB related tests and I run them against the configurations. And in one scenario, it just runs with the test cluster. In the other scenario, I make them serialized so they can't run concurrently to other tests. And before and after the tests, I patch the cloud config to essentially modify it so to test the other scenario that wouldn't be covered. I think this should work. So it also means that these tests for NLBs run twice, but I think it's legitimate because some of these tests are like, for example, testing the air pinning works, and that is regardless of whether the security groups of the network balancer are managed or not. So testing it twice, I think it's just an extra layer of safety and would avoid us to double provision the cluster. Otherwise, the alternative is what my PR is currently doing. We just run all the tests with this flag set, which exposes us to some, let's say, I would say minor, but still concerns related to, okay, what happens now? Are we going to risk introducing regressions when the flag is not set? I think this is a valid concern. So I hope I was clear enough. Sorry, I didn't prepare for this, but felt like I had the right audience here. So.
No, I think this is a great topic to bring to us, Federico. Like, thank you for coming here. I'll obviously, defer to Kirthan on any like AWS specifics or whatever, but I'll just say from the perspective of how we do cluster autoscaler testing, we do something very similar where like we change the configuration of the autoscaler itself kind of between test runs. So I think like given the two solutions you talked about, like just based on what I'm hearing, I think doing it in the serialized way where you change the configuration between the test runs, that probably makes sense to me. But I saw Kirthan unmute,
Yeah.
so please, Kirthan.
Yeah, I think like that's what makes sense. Like we can run the test in serial order and change the CCM config. Reason is because like there's like I mean, even though it's just security groups, but there's a lot of code paths which are like if-else based on the config. So it would be good to test it's not breaking the existing functionality. So I think instead of creating a new cluster, I think just running in serial with updating the cloud config is what is better as per me also.
Yeah, I agree with that. The only just comment is I have to provision the cluster with this config set and not the opposite. So with the config missing and then add it, because setting the config also injects an IAM permission that's required. And that's something I can't do at test runtime. But it's effectively the same thing, just done in the opposite direction. So yeah,
that should be fine.
Okay, I'll update the PR and then we can discuss there over the PR.
Cool. And I think Walter has a question too here.
More of an observation. I mean, if we're talking about what manual testing we should do before merging, I am all on board. But I will say, sort of looking at Hiram's law, and we have a very large API surface. We can't actually automate every test for every possible API configuration. So, I mean, if we're talking about what are the one-time tests that we try and run broadly before, just to make sure everything's working the way we think it is before we merge, great. But I think we should probably think about having a recommendation on do we run with this or not, and then trying to limit the automated tests where we try it each way to things that are actually we think are directly relevant to the feature in question. Did that make sense?
So maybe I think, do you mean like running in as a canary versus as part of the PR test, one-time thing?
I'm saying what you run as a one-time test, like run as much as you can one time, but I don't think we want to run like as a general rule, we shouldn't be going, I have a new feature. Let's run the full automation suite on both settings for every new flag. We will run out of money to run tests very quickly that way. That's the observation I'm trying to make.
Yeah, I mean,
oh,
sorry. Go ahead, Kirtan.
Sorry, like that. I think I understood the point. Like, I think that's the reason. Like, we are not trying to like have multiple clusters and thing. I think this is just since this can be achieved by just tuning a small cloud config and continuing the test. I think that's the reason like why I think it's okay to add for this feature like a test in the efficient test. If you don't require like creating a multiple clusters and all, I think I would agree there. Like, yes, I don't think we should be creating multiple clusters for every different configs to validate as part of every PR. Since this is just a small config change which can be done at runtime, I think it should be fine. Is what I was thinking.
Yeah, I'm planning to only run NLB relevant tests essentially twice with the two configs, which should be, I think, 3 tests duplicated. So not all the test cases, because I really think that would be a waste. I agree with you, Walter, that rerunning the entire test suite against 2 different configurations, even tests that are not really relevant to it, like CLB tests, for example, which are classic load balancers. I don't think there's a point in doing that. We also have unit tests to progress against gross regressions, I would say. So if I got your point, I think this aligns with what you're saying.
Yeah, no, that's it. And especially, I guess, sort of the meta point is I also don't want to set a precedent. Like, even if we think it's not that bad to do it once, like if we make a habit of this, that it goes to 2 and then 4 and then 8 and yeah. So it's I want to make sure we're doing targeted intelligent testing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're basically talking about the breakdown between like what our pre-submit test should be and what our periodic test should be. Because this is the kind of thing where it's like we probably want to run the full suite, once a week or once every couple of weeks to make sure we're not hitting regressions. But like on every pre-submit, we don't want to be running all these because yeah, we're just gonna be flushing money down the drain or whatever.
Well, and I will also say, kind of to your point, Almiko, and I think it's funny. I think this then goes back to what we were just talking about before this subject. If we have a distro and we have what we would call common, some common like recommended, I'm not coming cluster types, right? Like my boss doesn't like me using the word enterprise, but if we had like a minimal cluster and an enterprise cluster and an agentic monster cluster, I would say we should do a periodic for each of those cluster types. But I even there, like they may be configured differently, but we're not trying to get every permutation of configurations. We're saying, look, these are the recommended configuration sets, and we'll run the complete test set against each of those. I mean, granted, I'm going back to the, if we had distros and each distro had a set of recommended configuration types.
I mean, yeah, you're speaking my language, Walter. I think you're absolutely right that if we did have that mechanism to more easily kind of select what is the distribution you're running, but then also, yeah, what like being able to modify how that distribution is configured or whatever. Yeah, I think that would absolutely help you. So yeah, like I'm all in on that as well. I think it's
And I notice you on the fly came up with better examples to put in the notes than the ones I did.
this is probably just a reflection of how closely we've been working for the last few years.
Yeah, I think that kind of aligns with also our use cases because, for example, in downstream in OpenShift, we are going to have that config enabled by default, which is kind of the opposite of what is happening in upstream, at least in the testing infrastructure. So yeah, having this possibility of kind of configuring things differently based on the environment makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like a lot of this distribution talk kind of leans in heavily around like different configurations for Kubernetes and whatnot. And I don't know, like I think it's kind of an exciting topic, although it's difficult to make progress on. But yeah. Anyways, appreciate the topic, Federico. Hopefully that was helpful for you. It sounds like you got
Yeah,
some
very, very helpful. Thank you all.
cool. All right. If there's nothing else on that topic, does anybody else have ad hoc topics they'd like to bring up before we call this meeting to an end? Going once, going twice. Okay, we'll take back about 12 minutes of our day here. Thanks everybody for coming out, and I guess we'll see y'all next time.
Thanks.